James Keir Hardie was a Scottish socialist and the first Labour Member of Parliament. Hardie started work at the age of 7, but was rigorously educated at home by his parents, and later attended night school. Working in the mines, he soon became a full-time trade union organiser. His leadership of the failed Ayrshire miners' strike of 1881 made such an impact on the mine owners that they granted important concessions for fear of future industrial action. Having won the parliamentary seat of West Ham South as an independent candidate in 1892, he helped to form the Independent Labour Party the following year. In 1900 he helped to form the union-based Labour Representation Committee, soon renamed the Labour Party, with which the ILP later merged. Hardie was also a lay preacher and temperance campaigner who supported votes for women, self-rule for India, Home Rule for Scotland, and an end to segregation in South Africa. At the outbreak of World War I, he tried to organize a pacifist general strike, but died soon afterwards. Biographer Kenneth Morgan has sketched Hardie's personality. I found him a man who was not only an idealistic crusader, but a pragmatist, anxious to work with radical liberals whose ideology he largely shared. Subtle in building up the Labour alliance with the trade unions and the other socialist bodies, and supremely flexible in his political philosophy. A very generalized socialism based on a secularized Christianity rather than Marxism. Socialists, he proclaimed, made war on a system, not a classes. He was no economist and was ill-informed on many issues, but he had uniquely the charisma and vision that any radical movement needs. Early life. James Keir Hardie was born on the 15th of August 1856 in a two-roomed cottage on the western edge of Newhouse, North Lanarkshire, near Holytown, a small town close to Motherwell in Scotland. His mother, Mary Keir, was a domestic servant and his stepfather, David Hardie, was a ship's carpenter. The growing family soon moved to the shipbuilding borough of Govan near Glasgow, where they made a life in a very difficult financial situation, with his father attempting to maintain continuous employment in the shipyards rather than practicing his trade at sea. Never an easy proposition, given the boom and bust cycle of the industry. Hardie's first job came at the early age of 7, when he was put to work as a message boy for the Anchor Line steamship company. Formal schooling henceforth became impossible, but his parents spent evenings teaching him to read and write, skills which proved essential for future self-education. A series of low-paying entry-level jobs followed for the boy, including work as an apprentice in a brass-fitting shop, work for a lithographer, employment in the shipyards heating rivets, and time spent as a message boy for a baker, for which he earned 4 shillings and 6pence a week. A great lockout of the Clydeside ship workers took place, in which the unionized workers were sent home for a period of 6 months. With its main source of support terminated, the family was forced to sell all its possessions for food, with James' meagre earnings the only remaining cash income. One sibling took ill and died in the miserable conditions which followed, while the pregnancy of his mother limited her ability to work. Making matters worse, young James lost his job for twice going late. In desperation, his father returned to work at sea, while his mother moved from Glasgow to Newhill, where her mother still lived. At the age of 10 years, Hardie went to work in the mines as a trapper, opening and closing a door for a 10-hour shift in order to maintain the air supply for miners in a given section. Hardie also began to attend night school in Holytown at this time. Hardie's father returned from the sea and went to work on a railway line being constructed between Edinburgh and Glasgow. When this work was completed, the family moved to the village of Quarter, South Lanarkshire, where the boy went to work as a pony driver at the mines, later working his way into the pits as a hewer. He also worked for 2 years above ground in the quarries. By the time he was 20, the boy had become a skilled practical miner. Keir, as he was by now called, longed for a life outside the mines. To that end, encouraged by his mother, he had learned to read and write in shorthand. He also began to associate with the Evangelical Union, becoming a member of the Evangelical Union Church, Park Street, Hamilton, now the United Reformed Church, Hamilton, and to participate in the temperance movement. Hardie's avocation of preaching put him before crowds of his fellows, helping him to learn the art of public speaking. Before long, Hardie was looked to by other miners as a logical chairman for their meetings and spokesman for their grievances. Mine owners began to see him as an agitator, and in fairly short order he and two younger brothers were blacklisted from working in the local mining industry. Union leader. If Scottish mine owners had hoped to remove a potential Labour agitator from the midst by blacklisting Hardie from work in the mines, their action proved to be a major miscalculation. The 23-year-old Keir Hardie moved seamlessly from the coal mines to union organisation work. In May 1879, Scottish mine owners combined to force a reduction of wages, which had the effect of spurring the demand for unionisation. Huge meetings were held weekly at Hamilton as mine workers joined together to vent their grievances. On the 3rd of July 1879, Keir Hardie was appointed corresponding secretary of the miners, a post which gave him opportunity to get in touch with other representatives of the mine workers throughout southern Scotland. 3 weeks later, Hardie was chosen by the miners as the delegate to a national conference of miners to be held in Glasgow. He was appointed miners' agent in August 1879, and his new career as a trade union organiser and functionary was launched. On the 16th of October 1879, Hardie attended a national conference of miners at Dunfermline, at which he was selected as national secretary, a high-sounding title which actually preceded the establishment of a coherent national organisation by several years. Hardie was active in the strike wave which swept the region in 1880, including a generalised strike of the mines of Lanarkshire that summer which lasted 6 weeks. The fledgling union had no money, but worked to gather foodstuffs for striking mine families, as Hardie and other union agents got local merchants to supply goods upon promise of future payment. A soup kitchen was kept running in Hardie's home during the course of the strike, manned by his new wife, the former Lily Wilson. While the Lanarkshire mine strike was a failure, Hardie's energy and activity shone, and he accepted a call from Ayrshire to relocate to organise the local miners. The young couple moved to the town of Cumnock, where Keir set to work organising a union of local miners, a process which occupied nearly a year. In August 1881, Ayrshire miners put forward the demand for a 10% increase in wages, a proposition summarily refused by the region's mine owners. Despite the lack of funds for strike pay, a stoppage was called and a 10-week shutdown of the region's mines ensued. This strike also was formally a failure, with miners returning to work before the demands had been met. But not long after the return, wages were escalated across the board by the mine owners, fearful of future Labour actions. To make ends meet, Hardie turned to journalism, starting to write for the local newspaper, the Cumnock News, a paper loyal to the pro-Labour Liberal Party. As part of the natural order of things, Hardie joined the Liberal Association, in which he was active. He also continued his temperance work as an active member of the local Good Templars Lodge. In August 1886, Hardie's ongoing efforts to build a powerful union of Scottish miners were rewarded when the was formed the Ayrshire Miners' Union. Hardie was named organising secretary of the new union, drawing a salary of £75 per year. In 1887, Hardie launched a new publication called The Miner. The first independent Labour Party MP blamed immigrants for driving down wages of Scottish workers, and he accused them of stealing and being dirty. In an article written for the journal The Miner in 1887, he criticised the owners of the local Glengarnock ironworks for using Russian poles. He said, "What object they have in doing so is beyond human ken, unless it is, as stated by Speaker at Irvine, to teach men how to live on garlic and oil, or introduce the Black Death, so as to get rid of the surplus labourers." Scottish Labour Party. Hardie was a dedicated Georgist for a number of years while supporting the Liberal Party, where single tax ideas were particularly popular. Despite his early support of the Liberal Party, Hardie became disillusioned by William Ewart Gladstone's economic policies and began to feel that the Liberals would not advocate the interests of the working classes. Hardie concluded that the Liberal Party wanted the workers' votes without in return the radical reform he believed to be crucial. He stood for Parliament. In April 1888, Hardie was an independent Labour candidate at the Mid Lanarkshire by-election. He finished last, but he was not deterred and believed he would enjoy more success in the future. At a public meeting in Glasgow on the 25th of August 1888, the Scottish Labour Party was formed, with Hardie becoming the party's first secretary. The party's president was Robert Bonton Cunningham Grimm, the first socialist MP, and later founder of the National Party of Scotland, forerunner to the Scottish National Party. MP for West Ham South. Hardie was invited to stand in West Ham South in 1892, a working-class seat in Essex. The Liberals decided not to field a candidate, but at the same time not to offer Hardie any assistance. Competing against the Conservative Party candidate, Hardie won by 5,268 votes to 4,036. On taking his seat on 3 August 1892, Hardie refused to wear the parliamentary uniform of black frock coat, black silk top hat and starched wing collar that other working-class MPs wore. Instead, Hardie wore a plain tweed suit, a red tie and a deerstalker. Although the deerstalker hat was the correct and matching apparel for his suit, he was nevertheless lambasted in the press, and was accused of wearing a flat cap, headgear associated with the common working man cloth cap in Parliament. In Parliament he advocated a graduated income tax, free schooling, pensions, the abolition of the House of Lords and the women's right to vote. Independent Labour Party. In 1893, Hardie and others formed the Independent Labour Party, an action that worried the Liberals, who were afraid that the ILP might, at some point in the future, win the working-class votes that they traditionally received. Hardie hit the headlines in 1894 when, after an explosion at the Albion Colliery in Kilvarnet near Pontypridd which killed 251 miners, he asked that a message of condolence to the relatives of the victims be added to an address of congratulations on the birth of a royal heir. The request was refused and Hardie made a speech attacking the monarchy, which almost predicted the nature of the future king's marriage, which caused his abdication. From his childhood onward, this boy will be surrounded by sycophants and flatterers by the score, and will be taught to believe himself as of a superior creation. A line will be drawn between him and a people whom he is to be called upon some day to reign over. In due course, following the precedent which has already been set, he will be sent on a tour around the world, and probably rumours of a morganatic alliance will follow, and the end of it all will be that the country will be called upon to pay the bill. Quote, "This speech in the House of Commons was highly controversial and contributed to the loss of his seat in 1895. Labour Party. Hardie spent the next 5 years of his life building up the Labour movement and speaking at various public meetings. He was arrested at a women's suffrage meeting in London, but the Home Secretary, concerned about arresting the leader of the ILP, ordered his release. Keir Hardie, in his evidence to the 1899 House of Commons Select Committee on Emigration and Immigration, argued that the Scots resented immigrants greatly and that they would want a total immigration ban. When it was pointed out to him that more people left Scotland than entered it, he replied, "It would be much better for Scotland if those 1,500 were compelled to remain there and let the foreigners be kept out." Dr. Johnson said God made Scotland for Scotchmen, and I would keep it so. According to Hardie, the Lithuanian migrant workers in the mining industry had filthy habits. They lived off garlic and oil, and they were carriers of the Black Death. In 1900, Hardie organized a meeting of various trade unions and socialist groups, and they agreed to form a Labour Representation Committee, and so the Labour Party was born. In 1900, Hardie, representing Labour, was elected as the junior MP for the dual-member constituency of Merthyr Tydfil and Aberdare in the South Wales Valleys, which he would represent for the remainder of his life. Only one other Labour MP was elected that year, but from these small beginnings the party continued to grow, winning power in 1924. Meanwhile, the Conservative Unionist government became deeply unpopular, and Liberal leader Henry Campbell Bannerman was worried about possible vote splitting across the Labour and Liberal parties in the next election. A deal was struck in 1903, which became known as the Lib-Lab Pact of 1903, a Gladstone-MacDonald Pact. It was engineered by Ramsay MacDonald and Herbert Gladstone. The Liberals would not stand against Labour in 30 constituencies in the next election, in order to avoid splitting the anti-conservative vote. In 1906, the LRC changed its name to the Labour Party. That year, the newly established Liberal government of Sir Henry Campbell Bannerman called a general election, resulting in a heavy defeat for the Conservative Party, and the landslide affirmation of the Liberals. The 1906 general election result was one of the biggest landslide victories in British history. The Liberals swept the Conservatives out of what were regarded as safe seats. Conservative leader and former Prime Minister Arthur Balfour lost his seat Manchester East on a swing of over 20%. What would later turn out to be even more significant was the election of 29 Labour MPs. Later career. In 1908, Hardie resigned as leader of the Labour Party and was replaced by Arthur Henderson. Hardie spent the rest of his life campaigning for votes for women and developing a closer relationship with Sylvia Pankhurst. He also campaigned for self-rule for India and an end to segregation in South Africa. During a visit to the United States in 1909, his criticism of sectarianism among American radicals caused intensified debate regarding the American Socialist Party possibly joining with the unions in a Labour Party. A pacifist, Hardie was appalled by the First World War and along with socialists in other countries he tried to organize an international general strike to stop the war. His stance was not popular, even within the Labour Party, but he continued to address anti-war demonstrations across the country and to support conscientious objectors. After the outbreak of war on the 4th of August 1914, Hardie's spirited anti-war speeches often received opposition in the form of loud heckling. After a series of strokes, Hardie died in hospital in Glasgow on the 26th of September 1915, aged 59. His friend and fellow pacifist Thomas Evan Nicholas delivered the funeral service. He was cremated in Maryhill, Glasgow. A memorial stone in his honour is at Cumnock Cemetery, Cumnock, Ayrshire, Scotland. Legacy. On the 2nd of December 2006, a memorial bust of Keir Hardie was unveiled by Cynon Valley MP Anne Clwyd outside council offices in Aberdare. The ceremony marked a centenary since the party's birth. Also, he is still held in high esteem in his old hometown of Holytown, where his childhood home is preserved for people to view, whilst the local sports centre was named in his own honour, the Keir Hardie Sports Centre. There are now 40 streets throughout Britain named after him. Alan Morrison has, in turn, used the title Keir Hardie Street for his 2010 narrative-long poem in which a fictitious turn-of-the-century working-class poet discovers a socialist utopia off the dreamt-up sea green line of the London Underground. One of the buildings at Swansea University is also named after him, while a main distributor road in Sunderland is named the Keir Hardie Way. The Ellen Wilkinson estate in Wardley, East Gateshead, has Keir Hardie Avenue as its main street. Every other street is named after a Labour MP, pre-1960. The England footballer Chris Waddle lived in No. 1 Keir Hardie Avenue, Gateshead, between 1971 and 1983. The Keir Hardie estate in Canning Town is named after him as a legacy to his tenure as MP for West Ham South, Newham. Keir Hardie Avenue in the town of Cleator-Moor, Cumbria, has been named after him since 1942. Furthermore, an estate in the London borough of Brent was also named after him. Keir Hardie Crescent in Kilwinning in Scotland is also named after him. A block of apartments in Little Thurrock is named after him. There is also a Keir Hardie Street in Greenock. Keir Hardie, in his constituency town of Merthyr Tydfil, housed offices for Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council and adjoins the Civic Centre on Castle Street. There is also in Merthyr Tydfil a Keir Hardie estate with streets named after prominent early independent Labour leaders such as Wallhead and Glazier. In recognition of his work as a lay preacher, the Keir Hardie Methodist Church in London bears his name. Labour founder Keir Hardie has been voted the party's greatest hero in a straw poll of delegates at the 2008 Labour conference in Manchester. Labour peer Lord Morgan, Ed Balls, David Blunkett and Fiona McTaggart argued the case for Labour figures at a Guardian Fringe meeting at the Labour conference 2008 in Manchester. The 23rd of September 2008, Keir Hardie's younger half-brothers David Hardie and George Hardie and sister-in-law Agnes Hardie all became Labour Party members of Parliament after his death. His daughter Nan Hardie became Provost of Cumnock. Keir Hardie Society. On the 15th of August 2010, the Keir Hardie Society was founded at Summerley, Museum of Scottish Industrial Life. The Society aims to keep alive the ideas and promote the life and work of Keir Hardie. Amongst the co-founders was Cathy Jameson, who at the time was the member of the Scottish Parliament for the constituency of Carrick, Cumnock and Doon Valley, which covers the area where Hardie lived most of his life. In other media, in August 2016, Jim Kenworth's play A Splotch of Red, Keir Hardie in West Ham was premiered at various venues in Newham, including Neighbours Hall in Canning Town, at which Hardie spoke. The play deals with Hardie's battle to win the constituency of West Ham South. It was directed by James Martin Charlton. Samuel Casely played Keir Hardie. Works: Karl Marx, The Man and His Message, 1910. Hardie, K.